Hello and welcome back, or welcome for the first time. Today I'm ready to start another episode of Coffee and Crafting with the Cocky Crocheter. Today I am excited about what I am going to be doing because it is actually a redo, which I know a lot of people are probably like, a redo? That doesn't sound like it's really fun. It sounds like, messed up something and now you have to do it all over again. But one of the things that I appreciate about any kind of art form, whether that's fiber arts or any other type of art you may engage in, is the opportunity to be able to practice, trial and error, make mistakes, and learn from those, and then create an even better version of it later when you actually decide to take the time to redo it. Hence why I'm also wearing this hoodie that I got, that I saw a few years ago, that I got from my mother-in-law one Christmas. And what I really loved about it is that it, I think, captured my attitude about any kind of mistakes or having to do a redo really perfectly. It's a little bit hard to see here, so I am going to go ahead and include a close-up of it just for you to see it. You can probably see that it is a little worn and cracked and everything from lots of washings and wearings, which means that it's a very well-loved hoodie. But I just kind of wanted to wear this for today because I thought it was perfect for what we are going to be talking about. So what I'm going to be doing is working on my glove. So if you have been following me, you know that I got this laceweight yarn from a local yarn shop, Little Tabby Yarn Company. And it is just this cute, beautiful, thin merino laceweight yarn. And I thought it would be perfect to make a glove. But I've had to do multiple iterations of this glove to get it to work right, and I'm finally, I think, working on the final version of it. So this is definitely a redo. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get this camera flipped around, get my coffee ready, get my candle ready, and hopefully you can get your own little project ready and start crafting with me. All right, let's get started, which we usually do with our candle. Get this nice golden winter golden pear. There we are. Let's set that right about there. There we go. And then I've got my coffee today. I am drinking a couple of shots of espresso with just some sweet cream in here. So it's going to be a nice tasty little treat for myself. And then for inspiration, what I'm doing is actually using this yarn bowl that was created back when I used to work at a yarn shop. And this is Ronnie Lee's Pottery Designs. This was by Robin Hurley, and I'm not sure if you can see that. But she made these beautiful, unique yarn bowls. And one thing that happened was, unfortunately, because of these, they're very beautiful little swoopy, wavy spikes. I did catch this once on a table edge and it broke off. So I thought, what a great way to kind of, be inspired about redo, where I'm like, just because something maybe isn't perfect anymore, we always have a chance of being able to fix things. So I was able to thankfully glue this back together, and now it's nice and secure. Although it does have that little bit of a crack, so I don't really like to use that slot anymore, but I do like to use these other slots when I use this yarn bowl. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. And then I've got my project here, where I'm going to set the yarn in there for you, or for myself, well, for you to watch and everything. But now I've got my project here, I have my hook, and then I've got my book here where I'm going to keep track of the rounds that I'm currently working on this project. So I've got quite a few more to do before I get to being able to split for the individual finger holes there. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get working. All right, getting my bearings here, working with this yarn. I've actually been working on this glove for the past couple of days now, and while it is a lace weight yarn with a very small hook, it's actually worked up relatively quickly, which has been really nice. Means that hopefully it won't take too terribly long to actually finish this project. But one thing in the spirit of, today's theme of, redos and all that, one thing that I do appreciate about any time I redo a project that I think, I'm not fully in love with it the first time around or even the second or third time around, I'm like, okay, I always tend to make it a bit better whenever I'm making new iterations of it. And thankfully, that has held true even with this project. So each time I've made a new version of this, something about it has improved, like maybe the fit or the polish of how the stitching looks, how it contours to my hand and everything. And thankfully, they haven't been huge changes that I've had to make. But every time even just a little change every time I make just a little change, it improves it fairly drastically. I'm just going to continue working on this for most of the video, but I know that later what I would like to do, if I remember, is I'd like to show you previous versions of it, just so by comparison you can see how it's changed over time. And I think that's really a good thing in general when you're talking about redoing anything, is not just to look at what you're making in the moment, but also how it's grown and improved from previous versions of what you made, if you happen to still have those around. Or sometimes what you might do is you rip back and start it over so you don't actually have it anymore to be able to compare, but your memory at least holds what the old versions were like and can compare how you're feeling about the current version that you're holding versus what you remember holding in the past. So, that can still be very valuable. For me, because of this being a lace weight yarn and it being 1,400 meters in a 100 gram twisted hank, I was like, it's okay. I don't want to rip back all of that progress that I made. The yarn it's a nice smooth merino, but honestly, it's not the best at frogging because it's a non-superwash wool. And so it tends to kind of cling to itself. It's very, very lightweight. So you can even see now how my tail can sometimes get caught with my working yarn here. So for me, I was like, it wasn't worth the hassle of trying to reclaim the yarn. Plus, it was nice being able to at least have the previous versions that I can compare. And if I need to, I could recover the yarn only if I really needed to. I know it's there, so it is a backup plan if I happen to run out of this giant cake of lace weight yarn here. Honestly, after making, I think this is the third or fourth. I think it's the fourth actual attempt, but the third one where I got past just the little wrist area. And I haven't even used, I think, half of the skein, maybe a third. So I definitely have plenty of yarn to work with. So I'm not too concerned about needing to recover that to be able just to make a pair of gloves here. But what I've loved about working with these is that every time I've also made a new iteration of this, I've gotten just more and more comfortable and practiced actually working with this yarn. I know in my previous episode, talk about things being small but mighty, and I was working on this project as well. So you got to actually see a previous version of this glove. And one thing that I remember initially struggling with this yarn, just being so small, was just how to maneuver it as smoothly as I do with like fingering weight yarn or sport weight yarn or something like that, without being like, I'm moving my hands all the time, or like, I'm making the stitches too tight and so I can't get my hook into it. But I've actually solved a lot of those tension issues simply because I've had to redo these gloves so many times. And so each one of those gloves that didn't turn out the way I wanted still held a lot of value, not only because of, the improvements I knew I wanted to make, but also just helping me become more practiced and comfortable with working with a new yarn. And I think that one thing that I've definitely noted is that I have felt similar things whenever I would try a new yarn. So my first time working with fingering weight yarn, or my first time working with a different fiber like a cotton yarn, or my first time working with a singles instead of a plied yarn. So it was a very different feel. Every single time, there was always a little bit of a learning curve as my hands adjusted to the different ways to comfortably work with the different fibers, the different weights. And each one of those, it was because I had to do some redos. I had to try again multiple times to figure out how stitching worked with those different fibers or different weights, which is a great reminder of how especially if you're starting something new, redoing has to be an inevitable part of the process. As frustrating as it can sometimes be, like, how my hoodie says, I just have to be dramatic about it first. You can be frustrated for sure. I know when I was first working with a fingering weight yarn, I did like it. I was kind of getting a good feel for it, but I was also like, oh my gosh, like these stitches, my tension is way too tight. Like I can't really work into these stitches as easily as I could with like the bigger yarn. Like my gauge wasn't as consistent, but every time I redid, a swatch or tried starting a project over with it, my hands got more comfortable with it. And I started to become a lot more relaxed. My stitches were a lot more even. My tension was definitely way more consistent. And now working with fingering weight yarn is like such a breeze. In fact, working with fingering weight yarn in comparison to working with this one actually is quite thick because it's about 3 times thicker than what this yarn is. Another thing that I wanted to redo, which was not something I thought about when I was working it, is that when I insert my stitch markers, so I'm working in continuous rounds here, which I'm sure if you crochet, you can easily lose track of your very first stitch of the round. So usually the trick is to place a stitch marker in your very first stitch, so that way you always know when you begin a new round. And it's a very helpful tip. But my stitch markers, as you can see, as thin as they are, with this thin of yarn, they are quite thick in comparison. So whenever I was working the previous versions of this, I was sticking this stitch marker through both loops of the stitch, and it was holding it, in place, and it was great. But then, unfortunately, because of how thick the stitch marker was, what was actually happening was the very first stitch of the round was always much bigger than all the other stitches. And the same thing happened when I had my increased stitch marker over here for where I was shaping for the thumb. So on both sides of my glove, I had this like line with this kind of very defined gap of these stitches that were just bigger, like slightly enough bigger than the other ones, that it was noticeable. And I did not like that. So after kind of experimenting through my redos, was able to figure out that if I just stuck it through one of the loops of the thread, yeah, it may stretch it a bit, but that means it also tightened the one behind it. And so while this one may have been looser, the other one was much tighter. So then whenever I removed this stitch marker, the loops would like move back into place and average out to be the right size. So I was like, okay, yeah, that's a great workaround for still using these stitch markers with these small, tiny stitches. And that was definitely something I was not going to be able to figure out or even know would be an issue unless I had worked those first few versions. So yet another good reason for why redoing can be an amazing thing for improving and perfecting our artwork. Take a moment, give myself a little sip of coffee here. And speaking of coffee, the coffee that I made in here, I mentioned earlier, was just 2 espresso shots with some sweet cream in it. So a little story about that is that my husband, he loves coffee, as do I, of course. He put this espresso machine on his wish list for Christmas, and he did get it. His mother / my mother-in-law did buy it for him, and he was very excited, but it definitely took us some time and a lot of trial and error to figure out how exactly does this espresso machine work? How do we actually, work the, oh my gosh, trying to think of all the technical terms for it. I should know better. I work at a coffee shop. Our espresso machines at Starbucks are very different from traditional espresso machines. They automatically dispense the grounds, they cake them, they do all the stuff for us to make sure that they're perfect each time. But this little machine that's on the counter, you have to grind your own beans, you have to measure it out yourself, you have to pack the cake in, to do all the things yourself. So I'm like, yeah, I may work in a coffee shop, but this is not how we do it. So I also have zero experience. Anyway, the point is that we had to go through quite a bit of trial and error to figure out just how to even work the machine. And at first we were like, okay, so I think we got it figured out, and then there would be something else that happens, like a little hiccup that happens along the way. And, thankfully the instruction manual provided, some great tips on, what to expect, or if it's doing this, this is what it means. It's okay. It's not broken or anything. You just wait for it to do this, or wait for it to cool down or something. Or just turn it off, wait 5 minutes and turn it back on, just little things like that. And now we almost exclusively, if we're making any kind of coffee at home, we just use the espresso machine. We do still have our Keurig, which, for a quick just cup of coffee is still really handy to have around. But usually if we're making coffee at home, it's because we've got time and we go ahead and just make the espresso. And we've pretty much perfected our technique for how to use the machine. We know now how to grind the beans the way we like. We know the type of beans we like to use with it. We have the cute little espresso cup set, which you got to see one of the little cups and saucers and the spoon in the previous episode. So you got to see how cute and small those were. Although those only hold 1 shot, they could hold 2 shots, but only 2 shots. If you wanted to put anything else in it, like cream or sugar or anything, basically it was going to be overflowing. So I stick to just putting 1 shot in those so that I can add my little add-ins in there, because just straight espresso is not my favorite. It's just not a flavor profile that appeals to me. And so for this one, I was like, yeah, for me to have 2 shots in this, I got myself a bigger cup here. So that way I could have 2 shots with my sweet cream. And it's just the right amount. Gives me a good caffeine boost. But that was also something we discovered. We thought, okay, well, the 2 shots will fit just fine in these little cups. And we very quickly discovered that is not true. Well, okay, they do fit, but like I said, but we discovered it doesn't let us be able to doctor our espresso the way that we want. So we couldn't make like a little latte or anything like that. It was literally just the espresso. So again, we had to redo and figure things out. And now we know what goes into those little cups versus what we need to use bigger cups for. So, just even this espresso machine is a great way of paralleling, like, doing any kind of redo in art or in life, or even if it's just making coffee. I mean, even making these videos, I'm sure you probably know, I'm doing it in my home, and I have cats, I've got a husband, my neighborhood is near some train tracks, and I've also got just like neighbors with some loud cars sometimes, or they might be mowing. So sometimes there might be instances when I'm recording one of these and then just something happens and I'm like, oh, dang it. Well, I guess I need to edit that out. But thankfully, I've learned through making these videos, my tutorial videos, my how-to videos, all of the videos that I've worked on, I know how to quote unquote redo things much better than I used to. So before I used to think like, oh my gosh, I had to get every single shot perfect. If I messed up, I had to start entirely over. Like it was not salvageable. I can't do anything with it, blah, blah, blah. Just delete it, move on, blah, blah, blah. Well, now I know that's not the case. I'm like, no, just keep recording. You had some good quality stuff on the recording. That's fine. You don't need to redo the whole thing. Just clip out the part where there was, the loud lawnmower that your neighbor decided to, use or start up right by your window. Or like, a tornado siren went off, because every week they test the tornado sirens here to make sure that they're working properly. And let me tell you, they always work properly because they are very loud and they blast for about like 2 to 3 minutes before they just shut off, and just basically everything is so loud at that time. So I'm like, oh, dang it. So anytime that happens, I'm always like, okay, just stop and let it continue recording. Once that goes off, just edit back in that you'll edit that part out. So all the redos I've done with my video editing, I've been able to, I wouldn't say necessarily perfect, but definitely gain some mastery over creating these videos so that they're not as much work for me, but still come out nice and polished. Okay, now here's what I'm talking about here. So you can see I pulled that out and notice that when I kind of stretched them back, these stitches are the exact same size as these ones. So you can definitely still see kind of like the spiraling happening here, but it's much harder to tell where that line is. So yeah, definitely a technique that was worth discovering through reworking this glove. There we go. Okay, I'm gonna work a few more stitches here. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and secure my loop so that it doesn't accidentally come undone or anything. But if kind of flatten that out there, we can see the shaping of it. It's got like a very narrow wrist, but that's actually something I really want from it, because when I put the glove on, the ribbing here stretches really nicely and actually fits nice and snugly to my wrist. So there's no air that's going to be getting in there. But if I compare that to my previous version, where I thought that this ribbing looked a little too tight to go around my wrist, so I stopped working it that way and worked on it using a different stitch pattern. It definitely looks much looser, and it definitely is. Even got as far as making the fingers here. But when I put it on, the ribbing here is just way too loose. Like, it does not fit super well to my wrist. It's just not gonna work for me. Whereas the main body of it still fit really nicely. So I knew that that part I didn't really want to change. But then something else that I can point out is, as you can see here, we've got this kind of line of these stitches that have a little bit more of a gap. And if I look, it's a little harder to see on that side, but this is where I would put the stitch marker to do the increasing. And when those stitches got like this wide, I'm like, oh, it creates that kind of like, you can't see the gaps in any of these stitches, but you can definitely see it in that line right there. And I was like, I don't like that line. So two of those things there. Another thing that I'm going to be addressing is this kind of like extra bit of fold that's right there. So a couple little things there that I want to address with this new version. But even still, a prior version of it had that same kind of like ribbing. It wasn't seamed up yet, so I didn't tell that it was too loose. But one thing I did notice about this one, I try that one on, is how long these gloves are. And I was like, I don't really need them to be this long. Like, I need them to be more up by my wrist. So when I made these first ones, I decided to go ahead and cut out or remove like a few rounds that I was originally putting in here and made the gloves a little bit shorter. So that was my first redo, was to address the length issue. And then now my next redo is to address some of these other little issues that I noticed. So just thought I would at least kind of show my progress on those, like I said I would. But with that, I'm actually going to go ahead and leave you here for today. I really appreciate you sticking around and working on your own craft as I, chatted in your ear. I hope that you really enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up. And if you can, feel free to go ahead and subscribe to my channel so you can keep up on any new videos that I post, whether it's another one of these coffee and crafting episodes or one of my tutorial videos with one of my new patterns, and anything else you might like, just see me pop up onto YouTube. Thank you again, and I hope you have a wonderful day.